The email from my father sat unopened in my inbox for 3 hours. Even the subject line, family discussion required, made my stomach churn. When I finally clicked it, my hands were shaking so badly I nearly knocked over my coffee. I'm June, and until yesterday, I thought being the responsible eldest daughter meant something. Turns out, it just meant I was the family piggy bank. Your mother and I have made an executive decision regarding your trust fund. The email read, given Enzo's company's current situation and its potential for growth, we've allocated the majority of your inheritance to support his venture. We trust you understand this is for the greater good of the family. I read it 3 times, each time feeling the rage build higher in my chest. My trust fund, the one I'd been planning to use for my own art gallery, had been handed over to my brother-in-law's failing tech startup without even consulting me. My phone buzzed. Kira. June, please tell me you're not mad. My sister's voice was small, guilty. Did you know? I demanded, pacing my apartment. Did you know they were going to do this? Enzo needed the capital, she whispered. His investors pulled out last month, and that's not what I asked. My voice cracked. Did you? No? The silence was answer enough. June, please, Kira started crying. You know how Dad gets. He said it was the only way to save the company, to save our reputation. I laughed bitterly. Our reputation? You mean his reputation? God forbid the great Davis Wolf's son-in-law fails at business. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, I snapped. Just like when he forced me to study business instead of art history. Just like when he made me take that corporate job instead of the gallery position. Every single time, I've had to sacrifice what I want for what he wants. My phone buzzed again. Mom calling. I declined it. You don't understand, Kira pleaded. Enzo has a plan. The company just needs 6 months. Stop! I sat down hard on my couch. Just stop. You know what's funny? I actually believed Dad when he said the trust fund was to help me build my dream. That after years of controlling everything, he finally understood. He does understand. No, he doesn't. I was shouting now. If he understood, he wouldn't have given my money to Enzo's doomed crypto-whatever startup without even asking me. Another call from Mom. Declined. June! Kira's voice hardened. You're being selfish. This is family. That word, family, hit me like a slap. Family? Was it family when Dad called my career choice playing with pretty pictures? Was it family when Mom sat silent while he tore apart my first curator job? Was it family when you all laughed at my gallery plans? Silence. I have to go, I said, suddenly exhausted. I have a meeting. With who? Ross. I smiled grimly. You know, that shifty tech guy Dad hates so much? Turns out he might be exactly who I need right now. June, don't do anything rash. I hung up. My phone immediately lit up with texts from Mom. Please call us. Your father wants to explain. I blocked both their numbers. Opening my laptop, I pulled up the business plan I'd been working on for months. The virtual platform for undiscovered artists. The one Dad had dismissed as unrealistic. My hands stopped shaking as I typed an email to Ross. Need your expertise. Have an idea that could disrupt the art world. Dinner tonight? His reply came instantly. Finally ready to stick it to the old man? I'm in, 8 p.m., usual place. I looked at the family photo on my desk, taken at Kira's wedding. Dad beaming at Enzo, Mom fussing over Kira's dress, me standing slightly apart. With one swift movement, I turned it face down. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Enzo. Thanks for the investment, sis. I knew you'd understand the importance of family. That was the moment something in me snapped. If they wanted to talk about family? Fine. I'd show them exactly what happens when you push the responsible daughter too far. I grabbed my keys and coat. Before heading out, I took one last look at my apartment, at the carefully curated art pieces I'd collected over years of playing with pretty pictures. Each one represented a small act of defiance against my father's wishes. Time for one big act of defiance. Hey, Ross! I texted. Change of plans. Let's meet now. I don't want to wait until dinner to start burning bridges. His response was immediate. That's my girl. See you in 20. As I stepped into the elevator, I felt lighter than I had in years. They thought they could control my future? Well, they were about to learn that sometimes the responsible daughter knows exactly how to get even, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. So, you want to build the Uber of art galleries? Ross leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised. We were sitting in his sleek downtown office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in diagrams and code. More like the anti-gallery, I said, spreading out my sketches. Think about it. There are thousands of incredible artists who can't get wall space because they don't have the right connections or deep pockets. What if we created a platform where they could showcase their work virtually, connect directly with buyers, and skip the gatekeepers entirely? Ross stroked his beard, studying my business plan. And by gatekeepers, you mean people like your dad? And every other stuffed shirt who thinks art belongs exclusively in their million-dollar galleries. I pulled up a prototype on my tablet. Look at this artist I found on Instagram, Olive Joseph. Her work is incredible, but she's selling prints from her apartment because no gallery will take a chance on her. Ross whistled as he swiped through Olive's portfolio. These are good, really good. Oh, exactly. And she's just one of hundreds I've been following. I leaned forward. Help me build this, Ross. You handle the tech, I'll handle the curation and connections. We could change everything. Your father's going to lose his mind when he realizes you're using your gallery connections to compete with him. I smiled. That's just a bonus. 3 weeks later, I stood in Olive's tiny studio apartment, surrounded by her haunting abstract paintings. You want to feature my work? On a real platform? Not just feature it, I said, watching her face. I want you to be our flagship artist, the face of what we're trying to build. Olive ran a paint-stained hand through her curly hair. But I'm nobody. I mean, I've never even had a proper show. That's exactly why I want you. Your work speaks for itself. It doesn't need some pretentious gallery owner's stamp of approval. Her eyes filled with tears. My parents think I'm wasting my life. They keep telling me to get a real job. Trust me, I laughed. I know exactly how that feels. Just then, my phone buzzed. Henry Edwards, one of the most influential gallery owners in the city and a longtime family friend. My finger hovered over the decline button. Sorry, I told Olive. I should take this. June! Henry's voice boomed through the speaker. Your little project is causing quite a stir. Just had 3 different people ask me about it at the Phillips auction. My heart skipped. How did they even know about it? We haven't launched yet. Word travels fast in our world, darling. Listen, I'm hosting a private viewing next Friday. Come by. Bring your new artist. What's her name? Olive? People are curious. I looked at Olive, who was pretending not to eavesdrop while organizing her brushes. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. Oh, and June, your father was asking about you at the club yesterday. Seemed quite concerned about your mental state. I'm sure he was, I said coldly. Goodbye, Henry. I turned to Olive, who had given up pretending not to listen. How do you feel about crashing a very exclusive gallery party? Her eyes widened. Are you serious? Deadly. It's time to show them what real art looks like. That night, Ross and I sat in his office, finalizing the platform's design. The beta version goes live tomorrow, he said, typing furiously. You sure you want to do this? Once it's out there? I'm sure. I watched the screen as he worked. Any word from my sister? 3 emails today. Want me to keep blocking them? Please. I stood up, walking to the window. The city lights blurred below, reminding me of Olive's latest painting. You know what the worst part is? They probably think they did me a favor, that they're protecting me from myself. Ross stopped typing. June, look at this. I turned. On his screen was an article about Enzo's company. The headline made my blood run cold. Tech startup faces investigation over misappropriated funds. Well, I said after a long moment, isn't that interesting? Want me to dig deeper? I thought about my father's face when he realized what I was building, about my mother's silence all these years, about Kira's blind loyalty to her husband. Not yet, I said. Let's launch first. Let them see what I've created. Then we'll see who needs protecting. Ross nodded, understanding perfectly. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Tomorrow's going to be revolutionary, I corrected, picking up my coat. And Henry's gallery party on Friday? That's going to be explosive. As I left Ross's office, my phone lit up with a text from Olive. Just finished a new piece. Called it Family Ties. Think you'll appreciate the symbolism. I smiled, imagining my father's face when he saw it hanging in Henry's gallery. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying something. It's about creating something better. Henry's gallery buzzed with the usual crowd. Wealthy collectors sipping champagne, critics whispering in corners, artists trying to look effortlessly bohemian in designer clothes. I adjusted Olive's painting one last time, making sure it was perfectly centered. "Stop fidgeting," Ross whispered, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. "You're making me nervous." "I'm not fidgeting," I lied, accepting the glass. "I just want everything to be perfect," he smirked, "like you haven't been obsessing over this moment for weeks?" Before I could respond, I heard a familiar laugh. My mother's laugh. I turned to see my entire family walking through the entrance. Dad in his signature navy blazer, Mom clutching her pearls, Kira and Enzo trailing behind like perfect accessories. "They're here," I muttered to Ross. "Right on schedule." "Want me to run interference?" "No, let them come." I watched as they made their way through the crowd, my father nodding at acquaintances, my mother touching people's arms in that affected way she had. They hadn't spotted me yet, but they would. Olive's painting was impossible to miss. June. Henry materialized at my elbow, smooth as ever in his tailored suit. "Your little digital venture is all anyone can talk about. Quite the coup." "It's not a coup, Henry. It's a revolution." He laughed, but his eyes were sharp. "Always so dramatic. You know, your father and I were just discussing—" "June?" My mother's voice cut through the crowd. She stood frozen, staring at Olive's painting, at the twisted, broken family portrait that dominated the wall. "Hello, Mom!" I didn't move from my spot. "Like the artwork?" My father stepped forward, his face darkening as he took in the painting. "What is this?" "This!" I gestured with my champagne glass. "This is Family Ties by Olive Joseph, the first artist to be featured on my new platform. The one you said would never work?" Kira moved closer, her eyes wide. "June, it's beautiful." "It's garbage," Enzo snapped. "Abstract nonsense without any real—" "Actually," Henry interrupted, "it's already sold, for quite an impressive sum." The silence that followed was delicious. "You're making a scene," my father said quietly. "We should discuss this in private." "Why?" I stepped closer. "Afraid people might hear how you stole my trust fund to prop up Enzo's failing company? Or should we talk about the investigation into those misappropriated funds?" Enzo's face went white. "How did you—" "No," I smiled. "I have friends in interesting places now. Speaking of which," I waved across the room. "Olive, come meet my family." Olive approached cautiously, paint still under her fingernails despite her best efforts to clean up. She looked both terrified and defiant. "So you're the artist," my father said coldly. "I am." Olive lifted her chin. "And you must be the father who thinks art is just playing with pretty pictures." My mother gasped. Kira covered her mouth. I fought back a grin. "June," my father's voice was dangerous now, "this little tantrum has gone far enough. You're embarrassing the family name." "No, Dad. You did that when you decided my dreams were worth sacrificing for his." I pointed at Enzo, who was sweating visibly now. "It was a business decision," he started. "It was betrayal," I cut him off. "And now?" "Now I'm making my own business decisions." Henry cleared his throat. "Speaking of business decisions, June, I've been meaning to discuss a potential collaboration." Everyone turned to look at him. Your platform is intriguing, he continued, with my connections and your vision. Careful, Henry, my father warned. Remember our discussion. But Henry wasn't looking at my father anymore. He was looking at Olive's painting, at the growing crowd around it, at the sold tag that proved everything they'd said about me wrong. I think, Henry said slowly, that it's time for some new blood in the art world. Don't you agree, June? Before I could answer, Kira stepped forward. I want to invest. What? Enzo grabbed her arm. Kira, don't be stupid. She yanked away from him. I'm not being stupid. I'm finally being smart. She turned to me. I'm sorry, June. I should have stood up for you before. Kira, my mother pleaded. Think about what you're doing. I am thinking, Mom. For the first time in years, I'm actually thinking for myself. The gallery had gone quiet, everyone pretending not to watch the family drama unfolding. My father looked like he might explode. This isn't over, he said through clenched teeth. You're right, I agreed. It's just beginning. By the way, Dad, you might want to check your own gallery's numbers. I hear digital platforms are really cutting into traditional sales these days. As my family stormed out, with Kira lingering behind, Henry raised his glass to me. Well played, though you might have made some powerful enemies tonight. I clinked my glass against his. Good thing I've made some powerful friends, too. The night was young, and revenge, I was learning, tasted better than champagne. You need to see this, Ross said, barging into my office without knocking. He dropped a stack of papers on my desk, his face grim. What am I looking at? I picked up the first document, scanning the financial statements. Remember how I said I'd dig deeper into Enzo's company? Well, I found something interesting. These transactions? He pointed to a series of numbers. They match perfectly with deposits made to Henry's personal account. My stomach dropped. Henry? Our Henry? The very same. He's been quietly funneling money from your trust fund through Enzo's company and into his own pockets. Your father had to know. I sat back, the betrayal hitting me in waves. That's why he was so eager to collaborate. He wanted to cover his tracks. My phone buzzed. Kira calling. I put her on speaker. June? Her voice was shaky. I just overheard Enzo on the phone with Henry. Something about moving money before the audit. I know. I cut her off. Ross just showed me the proof. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, my office door opened again. Henry stood there, looking perfectly composed in his expensive suit. Ladies, he said smoothly, I hope I'm not interrupting. I ended the call. Actually, you are. I was just learning about your creative accounting. He closed the door behind him, his smile never wavering. Business is complicated, June. Sometimes we have to make arrangements. Arrangements? I stood up. Is that what you call stealing? Nothing was stolen. He walked to my window, looking out at the city. Your father understood that sometimes capital needs to be redirected for the greater good. The greater good of your bank account? He turned, his facade cracking slightly. You're playing a dangerous game, June. Your little platform is disrupting decades of carefully maintained relationships. People are getting nervous. Good, I spat. They should be. Be reasonable. He stepped closer. We can work something out. A partnership. Your vision, my connections. We could own this market. Ross moved between us. I think you should leave. Think about it, June, Henry continued, ignoring Ross. Your father's gallery is already struggling. One word from me to certain collectors. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a lifeline. He pulled out a contract from his jacket. Full partnership, equal share in both ventures. All this unpleasantness forgotten. I took the contract, pretending to read it. Then, very deliberately, I tore it in half. Get out. You're making a mistake, he warned. No, you made the mistake. Thinking I was still that quiet, obedient daughter who would do anything to please her father. I stepped closer. I have copies of every transaction, every email, every phone record. Want to guess how the art world would react to learning how the great Henry Edwards really makes his money? His face went red. You wouldn't dare. Try me. The door burst open again. Kira rushed in, breathless. June! Enzo's deleting everything. All the company files, all the records. Too late, Ross said, holding up a flash drive. I already backed everything up, including your conversation just now, Henry. Amazing what modern phones can record, isn't it? Henry's composure finally cracked. This isn't over. You're right, I agreed, because tomorrow, every major art publication is getting an anonymous tip about your arrangements. I wonder how many other artists you've screwed over. Your father won't survive this scandal, he threatened. Maybe he shouldn't. I walked to my door, holding it open. Maybe it's time for the old guard to fall. After he stormed out, Kira collapsed into a chair. What have we done? We. I raised an eyebrow. Yes, we. She straightened up. I'm done being caught in the middle. Enzo's been lying to me. Dad's been manipulating everyone. I want to help take them down. Ross whistled. Family dinner's going to be awkward. There won't be any more family dinners, I said, picking up my phone. Not after tomorrow. June! Kira grabbed my arm. Are you sure about this? Once we release those documents. They made their choice, I said, thinking of all the years of dismissal, of condescension, of being told my dreams weren't worth pursuing. Now I'm making mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Olive. Just sold 3 more pieces through your platform. Who needs galleries? I showed it to Ross and Kira. See, the future's already here. They just refuse to see it coming. Dad's going to lose everything, Kira whispered. No, I corrected her. He's going to lose what he stole. There's a difference. Ross started typing on his laptop. I'll start preparing the data dump. By this time tomorrow, the art world is going to look very different. I looked out my window at the city, at all the galleries that had refused to give artists like Olive a chance. At my father's gallery, standing proud and empty, sometimes revenge isn't just about getting even. Sometimes it's about tearing down the old world to build a better one. And I was just getting started. The headline splashed across every major art publication. Prestigious gallery owner and tech CEO implicated in financial scandal. Below it, photos of Henry, Enzo, and my father stared back at me from my computer screen. Holy shit, Olive breathed, leaning over my shoulder. It's actually happening. We were in the converted warehouse space I'd rented for our first major exhibition. Artists bustled around us, hanging works, adjusting lights, preparing for tonight's opening. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke. I'd blocked most numbers, but when it buzzed again with Kira's call, I answered. Dad's at the hospital, she said without preamble. He had a panic attack when the news broke. My hand tightened on the phone. Is he okay? Physically? Yes. But Mom's hysterical. She keeps saying we've killed the family. The family was already dead, I said. They just didn't know it yet. June! Ross burst through the doors, tablet in hand. You need to see this. Enzo just did a press conference. I put Kira on speaker as Ross pulled up the video. Enzo stood at a podium, his usual smugness replaced by desperate anger. These allegations are completely false, he was saying. This is nothing but a vindictive attack by my sister-in-law, who's angry about legitimate business decisions made by her family. Furthermore, the feed cut off abruptly as someone off camera pulled him away. He's losing it, Kira said quietly. He came home last night ranting about destroying you. I moved out this morning. You what? I'm staying at a hotel. I filed for divorce an hour ago. Before I could respond, the warehouse doors flew open again. Henry strode in, followed by 2 men in suits. This is private property, Ross stepped forward. You need to leave. Actually, Henry smiled coldly, I have every right to be here. You see, I own this building. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Check your rental agreement, dear. The company you're leasing from? It's one of my subsidiaries, and I'm terminating your lease, effective immediately. You can't do that, Olive protested. The exhibition opens in 6 hours. I can and I am. He gestured to the men beside him. These gentlemen will oversee the removal of all artwork. You have 1 hour. Like hell we do, I stepped forward. You really want to add illegal eviction to your growing list of scandals? Scandal? He laughed. Please, your little exposé was a minor inconvenience. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies in place? Did you? Ross spoke up, smirking. Because the SEC might disagree. They're very interested in those offshore accounts you thought were untraceable. Henry's smile faltered slightly. You're bluffing. Check your phone, Ross suggested. Henry pulled out his phone, his face going pale as he read whatever message had just arrived. 1 hour, he repeated, but his voice shook slightly. 1 hour, or I'll have everything in here impounded. After he stormed out, the warehouse erupted into chaos. Artists scrambled to protect their work. Volunteers rushed to help. Phones buzzed with panicked calls. What do we do? Olive asked, clutching her newest painting. I looked around at the beautiful chaos we'd created, at the artists who'd trusted me, at the dreams we'd built together, at everything we stood to lose. Ross, I turned to him. Remember that empty retail space you showed me last week? The one with the glass front? The department store? Yeah, but it's way out of our... Call them, offer whatever they want. We're moving the exhibition. June? Kira's voice came through the phone, still on speaker. I can help. The divorce papers include a claim on Enzo's assets, including his private art collection. You'd do that? Watch me. The next few hours were a blur of trucks, volunteers, and determined artists. Social media exploded with photos of our impromptu art parade through downtown, paintings and sculptures carefully carried through the streets. The hashtag #JacquesArtRevolution started trending. By sunset, we'd transformed the empty department store into a gleaming gallery space. The floor-to-ceiling windows displayed Olive's work to the growing crowd outside. 10 minutes to opening, Ross announced, surveying our work. The press is already here, along with some very interested SEC agents. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your father's being released. He's asking for you. I showed it to Kira, who'd arrived to help with the setup. Are you going to see him? She asked. No, I replied, watching the crowd grow larger outside. I'm exactly where I need to be. The doors opened, and people flooded in. Among them, I spotted several prominent collectors who'd previously dismissed our platform. They weren't dismissing us now. Ready? Olive appeared beside me, still wearing her paint-stained apron. I looked at her, at Ross, at Kira, at all the artists who'd refused to be silenced. At the future we were building on the ashes of the old guard. Ready, I said, stepping forward to greet our guests. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about destroying the old world. It's about building a new one in plain sight. They're calling it the Night of New Art, Ross said, sliding a tablet across my desk. The article showed photos from our impromptu gallery opening, including a stunning shot of Olive's work illuminated in the department store windows. Look at the sales figures, I replied, pushing my own laptop toward him. We made more in one night than my father's gallery made in the last 3 months. Before Ross could respond, my office door burst open. Henry walked in, looking decidedly less polished than usual. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. Security, I called out, but Henry raised his hands. Please, just listen. I'm not here to threaten you. Ross moved to stand beside my desk, arms crossed. Then why are you here? Henry sank into a chair, suddenly looking old. Because I made a mistake. Several mistakes, actually, and I want to make it right. By make it right, do you mean before or after the SEC investigation? I asked sweetly. I deserve that, he nodded. But there's something you need to know. About your father, about the whole arrangement. My phone buzzed. Kira calling. I put her on speaker. June! Her voice was urgent. Enzo just confessed everything to the investigators. Everything. Including stuff about Dad we didn't know. Henry closed his eyes. So it's starting. What's starting? I demanded. What don't I know? Your father. Henry leaned forward. He didn't just take your trust fund for Enzo's company. He took everything: the gallery's acquisition fund, client deposits, even his pension. It's all gone. The room went silent. That's not possible, I said. Dad would never. He was desperate, Henry continued. The gallery was failing long before your platform came along. He gambled everything on Enzo's company, thinking it would save the family legacy. And you helped him, Ross accused. I tried to stop him at first, then. Henry looked ashamed. Then I saw an opportunity to profit from his desperation. I'm not proud of it. My phone buzzed again, this time with breaking news alerts. The story was everywhere. Prominent gallery owner accused of massive fraud. Why are you really here, Henry? I asked. He pulled out a USB drive. Because this contains proof that could save your father from prison. Evidence that he was manipulated, that Enzo and I were the real architects of the scheme. And what do you want in exchange? Nothing. He placed the drive on my desk. Consider it my attempt at redemption. Use it or don't. It's your choice. As if on cue, Olive burst into the office. June, you need to come downstairs. Your parents are here. I grabbed the USB drive and followed her to the gallery floor. My mother stood near Olive's newest installation, crying quietly. My father sat in a chair nearby, looking small and defeated. June, he said when he saw me. I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? Both. He struggled to stand. I was wrong, about everything, about you, about art, about what really matters. Dad. Kira appeared from behind a sculpture. The investigators are on their way. They want to talk to you. He nodded. I know, I called them myself. What? My mother's head snapped up. Davis, no! It's time, Margaret. He turned to me. You built something beautiful here, June. Something real. I destroyed everything trying to preserve a legacy that wasn't worth saving. I felt the USB drive heavy in my pocket. I have evidence. Proof that you were manipulated. No. He shook his head. I made my choices. I have to face them. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. June! My mother stepped forward. Please, help him. I looked at Kira, who nodded slightly. At Ross, who shrugged. At Olive, whose art had started this whole revolution. I'll make you a deal, I said to my father. I'll give them the evidence, tell them you were coerced, on one condition. Anything. The gallery, sign it over to me. Let me turn it into something new, something honest. He didn't hesitate. It's yours. It always should have been. The investigators arrived, filling the gallery with badges and questions. As they led my father away for questioning, Henry stepped forward. I'll tell them everything, he said. The whole truth. My mother touched my arm. Thank you. I'm not doing it for you, I said. I'm doing it because someone needs to show the art world what integrity looks like. As the chaos subsided, I stood in the center of the gallery, surrounded by the art of people who'd never had a chance before. By dreams that had finally found their space to shine. So, Ross said, coming to stand beside me. What now? I looked at the empty walls of what would soon be my gallery, at the endless possibilities stretching before us. Now, I smiled. Now we show them what real revolution looks like. Sometimes redemption comes in unexpected ways, and sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's justice. The courtroom fell silent as my father stood to address the judge. 3 months had passed since the scandal broke, and now everything came down to this moment. Your Honor, he began, his voice shaking slightly, I've spent my life believing that legacy was something you protected, no matter the cost. I was wrong. I sat between Kira and my mother in the front row, watching the man who had once seemed invincible look so small in his gray suit. My daughter, he turned to look at me, created something revolutionary while I was busy destroying everything our family had built. She showed me what real legacy looks like. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Wolf, are you prepared to make full restitution to the affected parties? Yes, Your Honor. I've already signed over all my assets, including the gallery, to a trust that will compensate every client we wronged. Enzo, sitting with his lawyer across the aisle, shifted uncomfortably. His trial was next week, and Henry's testimony had destroyed any chance of leniency. The judge shuffled some papers. Given your cooperation, the evidence of coercion, and your efforts at restitution, I'm prepared to offer a lenient sentence. My mother grabbed my hand. Kira held the other. 3 years, with possibility of parole after 18 months, plus 5 years of supervised release. The gavel came down, and the room erupted in murmurs. My father turned to face us, relief and regret mixing on his face. "June!" he called out as the bailiff approached. "The gallery! Make it everything I couldn't." I nodded, unable to speak. As they led him away, my mother broke down sobbing. "He'll be okay," Kira whispered. "We'll all be okay." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. "June, what are your plans for the gallery? Will you continue your digital platform? How do you respond to accusations that you orchestrated your father's downfall?" "Back off," Ross appeared, creating a path through the crowd. "Ms. Wolfe will release a statement later." We escaped to a nearby cafe. Me, Kira, Ross, and Olive, who'd been sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom. "So," Olive said, stirring her coffee, "what happens now?" I pulled out my tablet, showing them the plans I'd been working on. "We merge everything: the digital platform, the physical gallery, the artist residency program. Create something that's never existed before." "Using Dad's old gallery space?" Kira asked. "No," I smiled. "I'm selling it. That money goes to the restitution fund. We're building something new, from the ground up." Ross whistled at the blueprints. "That's ambitious." "That's the point." I swiped to the next image. "Look at this space. It's an abandoned theater in the Arts District. Perfect location, amazing bones, and enough room for both physical exhibitions and digital installations." "I know that building." Olive leaned forward. "It's been empty for years. Nobody wanted to take the risk. Until now." I pulled out a stack of papers. "The loan came through this morning. We close next week." My phone buzzed. Henry calling. I'd been avoiding him since his testimony helped reduce my father's sentence. "Answer it," Kira urged. "He did help in the end." I put the phone on speaker. "Hello, Henry." "June." His voice sounded rough. "I heard about the sentence. I'm glad I could help." "Is that why you're calling?" "No." He cleared his throat. "I'm calling because I want to make a donation. To your new venture. No strings attached, no involvement. Just reparation." I looked at my friends around the table. At Kira, who'd lost a husband but found her voice. At Olive, whose art now commanded prices Henry's gallery would have demanded. At Ross, who'd helped me burn down the old world to build a better one. "Keep your money," I said, "but I will make you a deal." "I'm listening." "The young artists you rejected over the years, send them to me, all of them. Let them know there's finally a place where their work matters more than their connections. Silence, then." "I can do that." After I hung up, Olive raised her coffee cup. "To new beginnings?" "To revolution," Ross corrected. "To family," Kira added softly. "The kind we choose." I looked out the cafe window at the city skyline, imagining our new space filled with art and light and possibility. At the future, we were building from the ashes of the past. "To all of it," I said, raising my cup. "To everything we're about to create." My phone buzzed again, a text from my father's number, sent by a guard. "I'm proud of you. I should have said it sooner." Sometimes the biggest victories come after the hardest battles. Sometimes family has to break before it can heal. And sometimes you have to tear everything down to build something true. I looked at my chosen family around the table, at the plans for our future spread between coffee cups and pastry crumbs. "Ready?" I asked them. Their answers came without hesitation. "Ready." The real work was just beginning, and this time we'd build it right. "Ready for the big reveal?" Ross asked, his hand on the light switch of our new space. The converted theater hummed with anticipation, filled with press, artists, and collectors. "Wait," I said, grabbing his wrist. Through the crowd, I spotted my mother standing awkwardly near the entrance. She hadn't returned my calls since Dad went to prison. "Mom?" I approached her. "I didn't think you'd come." I almost didn't. She twisted her wedding ring. "But your father insisted. He wanted me to give you this." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter and a small key I recognized immediately, the key to his private gallery office. "Read it," she whispered. The letter was short. June. This key opened the door to everything I thought mattered. Now it belongs to someone who knows what really does. Love, Dad. I clutched the key, feeling its weight. Not just metal, but history, change, redemption. "Ross," I called out. "Hit the lights." The space transformed. Digital projections danced across centuries-old brick walls. Olive's newest installation, a massive, interactive piece about family and forgiveness, dominated the main stage. Around it, works from dozens of previously unknown artists filled every corner with color and life. "Oh my God," my mother breathed. "It's beautiful." Kira appeared beside us, champagne in hand. "Better than the old gallery, right?" "It's—" Mom wiped her eyes. "It's what art should be." The crowd gasped as the central installation shifted, responding to their movements. Olive had outdone herself. Each piece told a story of breakdown and rebirth, of old systems crumbling to make way for new growth. June!" Henry's voice cut through the murmur. He stood with a group of serious-looking collectors. "These gentlemen have some questions about your artist development program." I started to move toward them, but Mom grabbed my arm. "Wait," she said. "I need to tell you something. Your father, he's teaching art history to other inmates. Can you believe it? He says he finally understands what you were trying to tell him all those years." Before I could respond, Enzo's face appeared on every screen in the gallery, part of Olive's installation documenting the scandal. The crowd fell silent as his confession played out in larger-than-life detail. "Should I cut that part?" Olive appeared, looking concerned. "No," I said firmly. "Let them see. Let them remember." My phone buzzed. A text from Ross. "Check the sales dashboard, now." I pulled out my tablet and nearly dropped it. We'd just broken every opening night record in the city's history. "June!" Henry called again, more urgently this time. "These collectors are offering to fund expansion locations in 3 other cities." "Tell them to wait." I handed my tablet to Kira. "There's something I need to do first." I climbed onto the old theater stage, tapping a glass for attention. The crowd quieted. "Welcome to the future of art," I began. "But before we talk about where we're going, I want to talk about where we've been." I held up the key my father had sent. This key opened a door I never wanted to walk through. It represented everything wrong with the art world. Exclusivity, gatekeeping, the idea that some voices matter more than others. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Several prominent gallery owners looked away. "Today, we're melting it down, right now, on stage." Olive wheeled out a small furnace, part of her installation. The crowd murmured as I dropped the key in. "From this metal, we're casting something new, something that can't lock doors or keep people out." The key melted, and Olive poured the liquid metal into a mold she'd prepared. "A bell," I announced as it cooled, because art shouldn't whisper behind closed doors. It should ring out for everyone to hear. My mother was crying openly now. Kira held her hand, both of them watching as Olive lifted the newly cast bell. "Ring it!" someone called from the crowd. I took the bell, feeling its weight, lighter than the key, but somehow more significant. "To new beginnings," I said, and rang it. The clear note filled the space, mixing with the digital displays, bouncing off artwork that would never have seen the light of day in my father's gallery. Henry raised his glass. "To June, who taught us all how to see differently." "To June," the crowd echoed. I looked at my mother, who nodded through her tears. At Kira, who'd found her own path. At Ross, who'd helped make it all possible. At Olive, whose art had given voice to our story. The bell rang again. Olive had taken it, adding its sound to her installation. The note morphed and changed, becoming part of something larger, something new. Sometimes endings aren't really endings at all. Sometimes they're just the first note of a different song. I stepped off the stage into my new reality, one where art breaks barriers instead of building them, where voices ring out instead of being locked away. And somewhere, in a prison art history class, my father was finally learning to listen.